When we speak of God's shield, many are tempted to imagine an ancient warrior's emblem, a piece of metal strapped to the arm to block arrows and swords. But God's shield is not a relic of human warfare. It is a living covenant, a divine reality that transcends the physical and enters the realm of the eternal. It is a promise, a pact sealed by the character of God himself, that those who stand under his covering will not be abandoned to the chaos of this world. It is not simply a religious idea to be admired from a distance. It is a spiritual force to be lived, experienced, and relied upon. A covenant is not casual. It is not a passing arrangement that dissolves under pressure. When God speaks of shielding his people, he is not offering them the fragile assurances of men who promise today and break their word tomorrow. He is offering a protection that is woven into the very fabric of his faithfulness. In Scripture, he declares that he is not a man that he should lie, nor a son of man that he should change his mind. This means that his shield is not dependent on fluctuating moods, not weakened by the passage of time, and not broken by the intensity of the battle. The covenant is alive because God himself is alive, and as long as he reigns, the shield remains intact. But what makes this shield extraordinary is that it is not a static object. It does not merely stand before you, waiting to be struck. It moves with you, encircles you, and responds to threats before you even perceive them. In the physical world, a shield blocks what you see coming. In the spiritual realm, God's shield intercepts even what you cannot see. It goes ahead into the unknown and prepares the way. It stands behind you where you cannot look, guarding your blind spots. It rises above you to shield you from what falls unexpectedly, and it steadies the ground beneath you so you do not stumble. This is why David could declare in the Psalms that God is a shield around me, and not in front of me only, not behind me only, but around me, encompassing my whole being. And understand this, the covenant of protection is not passive. It is not a shield that waits until you are bleeding to respond. Not out of defeat, but out of CANCELLED before they could at you strategy. How many traps have been dismantled in the night while you slept, unaware of the snares that had been laid for your feet? How many times have you walked through what looked like ordinary days, not realizing that the extraordinary shield of God was deflecting disasters you would never know about? The problem with many believers is not that God's shield is absent, but that their awareness of it is dim. When awareness fades, gratitude weakens. When gratitude weakens, faith becomes fragile. And when faith becomes fragile, the heart becomes vulnerable to fear. But when you awaken to the reality that you live under a divine covenant, when you truly internalize that your protection is not contingent on the security measures of men, but on the power of heaven, your spirit stands tall, fear loses its argument against your mind, and worry loses its place in your heart. Philosophically, we must recognize that God's shield is not meant to insulate us from every discomfort or difficulty, but to ensure that no force can derail the destiny God has decreed for us. Some will ask, if I am under God's shield, why do I still face challenges? And the answer is this: the shield of God does not eliminate the reality of the battlefield, but it guarantees that the battle will not consume you. You will feel the heat of the flames, but you will not be burned. You may hear the roar of the storm, but you will not be swept away. This is not the promise of an easy journey, but the assurance of a victorious one. Consider the psychological depth of living under such a covenant. The human mind, left to its own devices, is prone to anxiety, It imagines worst-case scenarios. It rehearses the sound of failure before success has even been attempted. But the consciousness of God's shield rewires the mental landscape. You begin to operate from a position of assurance, not assumption. You stop living in anticipation of catastrophe and start living in anticipation of divine intervention. You no longer plan your steps based on the fear of what might go wrong, but on the confidence of what will go right when God is for you. This covenant also has a moral implication. If you are under God's shield, you cannot live recklessly. The shield is a sign of relationship, not a license for irresponsibility. A soldier who trusts his armor still moves with discipline. He does not run into enemy fire without strategy. In the same way, those who live under God's covering must walk in obedience, humility, and alignment with His will. The shield is not for those who mock its giver, but for those who honor the covenant through their daily choices. It is here that many miss the fullness of the shield's power. They think of it only as protection from harm, but it is also protection for purpose. God shields you not only to save your life, but to preserve your mission. You are kept not merely to survive, but to fulfill a role in His greater plan. This is why certain attacks could not succeed, not because you were lucky, but because your survival is tied to an assignment bigger than yourself. So, my friends, when you wake tomorrow, do not simply thank God for the food on your table and the roof over your head. Thank Him for the unseen shield that allowed you to reach the day at all. Thank Him for the battles you did not have to fight because He fought them for you. Thank Him for the accidents that never happened, the betrayals that were exposed before they could harm you, the illnesses that were turned away at the door of your body. And then live in a way that honors that protection. Let your courage rise, let your obedience deepen, and let your gratitude overflow. We must understand that the battles of life are not confined to the terrain we can see. There is an invisible war being fought every day, a war without front lines, where the weapons are not made of steel and the wounds are not always visible. This is the realm where intentions are formed before they become actions, where schemes are drafted in darkness long before they emerge into the light. In this unseen theater of conflict, the power of God's shield is not merely helpful, it is indispensable. The Scriptures make it plain, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world. This means that the most dangerous battles you face are not the ones that announce themselves with noise and confrontation. They are the ones that operate quietly, often beyond your perception. While you go about your daily life, forces are at work. Some seeking your progress, others plotting your downfall. And here lies the mystery and majesty of God's shield. It engages in battles you are not even aware you are fighting. Philosophically, this is profound. Human beings pride themselves on awareness. We believe that knowledge is our greatest defense, that if we can identify a threat, we can neutralize it. But what about the threats you cannot identify? What about the lies whispered into the ears of others when you are not present to defend yourself? What about the unseen accidents that were moments away from unfolding before a sudden change of circumstances rerouted your path? What about the contracts, opportunities, or partnerships that would have destroyed you had they been signed but were never offered to you, and you thought you had missed a blessing? Could it be that some of what you call disappointment is actually divine interception? This is where the unseen hand of God's defense becomes evident. It is not always dramatic, but it is always deliberate. A conversation you were not invited to, a meeting that was postponed, a flight you missed, these might be the precise interventions of the shield, steering you away from danger so skillfully that you might even resent the detour. We see delay, God sees deliverance. We see rejection, God sees protection. In the invisible war, the enemy's strategies are often subtle. He does not always come with open hostility. Sometimes he comes dressed as opportunity, as friendship, even as love. The attack is not always a sword. It can be a seed of doubt, a moment of compromise, a gradual erosion of conviction. And without God's shield, the heart and mind are vulnerable to these slow, silent infiltrations. But with the shield, there is a divine filtration system at work. Harmful influences are blocked before they take root. Destructive alignments are dissolved before they can entangle you. From a psychological standpoint, living with this awareness transforms your posture in life. You no longer believe you are navigating the world alone, relying solely on your instincts or intellect. You begin to recognize that there is a layer of reality beyond your sight, and that you are guarded in it by one who sees everything. This is not an excuse for passivity. It is a call to vigilance with peace. You stay alert in the natural, but you are anchored in the confidence that the supernatural is also working for you. Consider how this awareness changes the way you respond to what seems like chaos. The car that cuts you off in traffic, the sudden change in job position, the friend who walks away without explanation. All of these, in the context of the invisible war, might be pieces in a larger strategy of divine defense. Instead of reacting with bitterness, you begin to respond with trust, understanding that some exits are as important as entrances, and some closures are as critical as openings. But let us not romanticize the shield as if it is merely a passive barrier. God's shield is active. It pushes back, it disrupts enemy formations, it confuses the plans of darkness. Sometimes the intervention is so decisive that what was meant to harm you ends up serving you. The very gossip meant to discredit you exposes the character of your accusers. The very loss meant to weaken you becomes the trigger for a new chapter of growth and opportunity. The unseen hand does not only protect, it also repositions. And we must grasp this truth. The invisible war is not only external, it is also internal. There are thoughts, temptations, and emotional storms that, if unguarded, can destroy from within what no external attack could dismantle. God's shield covers the heart and mind, fortifying them against these invisible assaults. That moment you wanted to give up but found unexpected strength, that was the shield at work. That temptation you were inexplicably able to resist, that was the shield at work. That peace that made no sense in the middle of chaos, that was the shield at work. Yet, for the shield to function in fullness, we must remain aligned under it. Even the strongest fortress cannot protect those who insist on stepping outside its walls. This is why humility, obedience, and intimacy with God are not optional. They are the positioning that keeps you within the circle of His defense. The invisible war is relentless, and the enemy studies his target well. Stepping outside the shield is not a risk worth taking. In the grand scheme, the shield is not about making life easier. It is about ensuring the fulfillment of purpose. The enemy's ultimate aim in the invisible war is not simply to harm you physically. It is to derail your destiny. If he can distract, delay, or destroy your mission, he has succeeded. God's shield is the divine guarantee that no such plot will prevail. You will reach the finish line not because the path was free of obstacles, but because every obstacle was met with a defense greater than itself. So, as you navigate this world, understand that the most important battles you face may be the ones you never see. Do not measure God's protection only by the visible victories. Measure it also by the invisible disasters that never happened. Some of the greatest miracles in your life are the tragedies that were silently canceled. When you truly awaken to the reality of God's shield, something in your posture changes. You no longer walk through life hunched over by the weight of fear or hesitation. Instead, you begin to move with a certain boldness, not arrogance, but a quiet confidence born of knowing you are not alone. This is not the reckless bravado of one who ignores danger. It is the measured courage of one who understands that danger is real, but has already been accounted for by a higher power. Fear is one of the most potent weapons in the arsenal of the enemy. It immobilizes, it distorts perception, and it robs people of opportunities they might otherwise seize. Many do not fail because they are incapable. They fail because they were too afraid to try. But when you are conscious of God's covering, fear begins to lose its argument against your heart. You start to realize that no weapon formed against you shall prosper, not because weapons will not be formed, but because their formation does not guarantee their success. Philosophically, this awareness shifts your entire decision-making process. Without the knowledge of divine cover, a person often calculates life based on minimizing risk. Every step is weighed against the worst-case scenario. But when you know you are shielded by God, you still count the cost, yet you do not let fear dictate the direction. You begin to move based on assignment rather than anxiety. Your goals stop shrinking to match your fears, and your fears begin shrinking to match your faith. This boldness under divine cover is not merely emotional. It is deeply practical. It changes how you pursue relationships, opportunities, and callings. You become less concerned with pleasing the crowd and more concerned with fulfilling your God-given mission. You understand that the same shield that protects you from external harm also protects you from the internal corrosion of compromise. It guards your convictions so you can stand firm even when standing firm is unpopular. And let us be clear, walking in boldness under God's shield does not mean you will never face criticism, opposition, or danger. In fact, it often means the opposite. Those who walk boldly often attract greater resistance precisely because they are moving against the tide. But the shield does not remove the presence of opposition. It removes the power of opposition to derail you. The arrows may be shot, but they cannot penetrate. The storms may rage, but they cannot sink the vessel. From a psychological perspective, this produces resilience. Resilience is not merely the ability to survive difficulty, it is the capacity to advance in spite of it. Fear causes retreat, boldness produces momentum, and momentum under God's shield is not easily broken. It is the ability to keep building, keep speaking, keep creating, keep serving, even when conditions are hostile, because you know the one who covers you is greater than the environment that surrounds you. Some will ask, but what if I fail? What if the path still leads to pain? The reality is that divine boldness is not the absence of failure. It is the assurance that even failure will be folded into the fabric of your destiny. The shield of God ensures that no loss is wasted. Even in defeat, lessons are forged, character is refined, and testimony is strengthened. You begin to see that pain under God's covering does not destroy. It develops. This perspective frees you from the tyranny of human approval. When you know that God covers you, you no longer need validation from those who cannot see your vision. You stop negotiating your obedience to fit into the comfort zones of others. You stop dimming your light to avoid the discomfort of those still hiding in shadows. You start speaking truth without fear of backlash, leading with integrity without fear of being undermined, and pursuing excellence without fear of being outshone. Because you understand, your shield is not their permission, your shield is His presence. There is also a moral responsibility that comes with this boldness. It is not a license to act without wisdom or to provoke danger needlessly. The soldier who trusts his armor still studies the battlefield. He does not wander into enemy territory without purpose. Boldness under God's cover means calculated action rooted in divine guidance. It means moving when He says move, speaking when He says speak, and resting when He says rest. The shield is not a toy for the impulsive, it is a sacred trust for the obedient. And when you walk in this way, you begin to inspire others not by telling them you are bold, but by showing them what it looks like to live without the chains of fear. Your life becomes a testimony that courage is not reserved for the naturally fearless. It is available to anyone who chooses to live under the covering of God. People begin to realize that boldness is not about personality. It is about perspective. It is the perspective that says, even if I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for I am not alone. The more you walk in this awareness, the more you begin to understand that the shield of God is not only about protecting you. It is about advancing His kingdom through you. Fearful people rarely change the world. Bold people do. And those who are bold under divine cover are unstoppable forces for good. They carry light into darkness, truth into deception, and hope into despair, not because they are immune to attack, but because they know attack cannot undo what God has ordained. So, I say to you, stop shrinking your dreams to fit the limits of your comfort zone. Stop waiting for the absence of fear to begin the work you were created to do. Fear will always try to speak. The question is whether you will allow it to dictate the direction of your life. Under God's shield, you have the right, the power, and the responsibility to move forward, not recklessly, but relentlessly,